In the later half of the 4th millennium B.C.E., human settlement in the southern Mesopotamian alluvium reached a density previously unknown in history. The city of Uruk expanded to cover 250 hectares, roughly a square mile, supporting a population of 20,000 residents. At the center of this settlement sat the Eanna temple complex, an estate dedicated to the goddess Inanna. Maintaining this hub required continuous, heavy inputs of grain, livestock, and labor from the surrounding region. To manage these assets, administrators developed early accounting tools. This image shows a black cylinder seal alongside its rolled clay impression. Officials pressed these carved stones into wet clay to track the disbursement of vessels and the allocation of personnel. Uruk's population density created a logistical bottleneck. Managing the calories and materials for tens of thousands of people in one location necessitated the development of complex bureaucratic administration. For decades, the presence of Uruk administrative artifacts across the Near East suggested a singular, unidirectional cultural expansion. This map illustrates Al-Ghaz's world systems theory. It models a colonial core, Uruk, imposing itself on a northern periphery in the Zagros Mountains to extract raw materials. Resources flow backward to supply the core, while Uruk exports a rigid, uniform culture through economic domination. Recent excavations in Iraqi Kurdistan, specifically within the Adaim Sirwan drainage basin, test this model with new material data. Spatial and petrographic evidence from these sites reveals a high degree of local variation. The data suggests the spread of Uruk material was a negotiated, localized process, rather than a top-down conquest. This evidence indicates that the narrative of a singular, first empire may overlook a more complex interaction driven by local actors. In the Adaim Sirwan Basin, the late Chalcolithic II and III periods represent a frontier of early contact with the Uruk sphere. The first signs of Uruk influence in the north were administrative technologies, not weapons or garrisons. The beveled rim bowl, or BRB, was the earliest export. These were standardized, mass-produced ceramic containers used to distribute rations to workers within the temple economy. This Proto-Cuneiform tablet represents the Uruk accounting package. It shows a structured grid with deep wedge and circular indentations. These marks allowed bureaucrats to track herds and grain, recording economic data mathematically to enable trade without a shared spoken language. The world's earliest global exports were tools of data management. They provided the framework for complex, long-distance trade. To map this, archaeologists apply the framework of glocalization to replace the world systems model. Glocalization describes a process where local communities actively filter global influences through their own established cultural traditions and practical needs. This schematic, developed by Viktor Radomodov, visualizes the dynamic. A broad global wave, the Uruk influence, filters through the prism of local agency, fracturing into distinct outcomes. Applying this framework requires analyzing the exact mechanisms of production to see how a specific community physically altered an incoming technology. Under glocalization, global contact acts as a catalyst for site-specific adaptations instead of cultural homogeneity. We test this theory using petrographic data, the microscopic analysis of clay recipes, from Connie Chaillet. The data reveals that northern communities adopted the utility of the Uruk beveled rim bowl, but they rejected the southern manufacturing techniques used to make them. Looking at this split-screen microscopic view of the clay, we see the contrast. The southern Uruk standard used jagged mineral tempers. The northern tradition utilized vegestal or chaff tempers, which left behind porous, fibrous voids when fired. This difference in clay recipes indicates that indigenous northern craftspeople manufactured these global shapes using their own local knowledge and materials. A true colonial occupation would likely dictate both the product and the process. This petrographic divergence confirms that local communities adopted global trends on their own terms. By the mature late Chalcolithic IV period, different local sites reacted to the peak of the Uruk wave with high variability. In the Ranya Plain, the landscape was reorganized into an industrialized zone dominated by pottery kilns, deep clay excavation pits, and extensive waste disposal. Contrast this with the site of Girgachaya. This site remained a small, quiet rural settlement that maintained its local pottery traditions, choosing to utilize only specific Uruk administrative tools. At Girdi Kala and Khani Shahi, archaeologists found advanced multi-chambered kiln complexes. The varying use of local versus Uruk pottery within these complexes suggests that this technology was a negotiated, localized development. This divergence in settlement behavior demonstrates glocalization in practice. Each community architected a different socioeconomic path in response to the same global stimulus. During the late Chalcolithic IV period, a complete Uruk package of mature artifacts rooted itself in the northern periphery. This included the advanced southern architectural aesthetics, such as Riemchen bricks and decorative clay wall cones on monumental structures. Proto-Cuneiform advanced through the rebus principle, where a sign represents a phonetic sound rather than an object, enabling complex administration to take hold locally. The presence of these advanced artifacts does not prove the existence of an extractive empire. Local elites and craftspeople adopted these specific architectural and bureaucratic tools because they were effective mechanisms for advancing their own local power and administration. In the late Chalcolithic V, the Uruk phenomenon collapsed, and southern influence receded from the north. As the Uruk network contracted, the northern communities executed a bold cultural pivot rather than suffering a complete systemic collapse. Vibrant local cultural zones emerged on the map, signaled by highly decorative painted pottery styles, as the region transitioned into the early Bronze Age. This transition shifts our understanding of the world's first purported empire. The Uruk expansion succeeded because its administrative package was adaptable. It provided a framework that allowed peripheral communities to glocalize the technology, assert their own agency, and reinvent themselves for a new era.